recording. Okay, start sharing the things you want to about Buttercup.
Okay, so Buttercup is this amazing song that we discovered through totally different means. You through the
So not through the ferret tummy dance gift for you then.
No, see that's the normal way because when I discovered this, everybody who was making comments about it was like, all I can see is a dancing ferret when I hear the song, and I'm like, I don't get that reference, but that sounds cool. Anyway, I was watching a YouTube. There's this guy who makes Warcraft or World of Warcraft videos, and it's like the natural progression of him and his friends. Like it's actually a really depressing video because it's like he gets into WoW. He like ignores his girlfriend, makes all these friends. They hang out for some time together, and then they one by one just quit in their own spectacular ways. And it's like
Oh
kind of like
no.
them all just fading away into non-existence. Like he never had friends to begin with, and it's just really sad, but
Wow.
it's the truth. It's how it works.
Bad vibes. Jeez.
Maybe I'll do Jack Stauber at some point, honestly, because his music is whack in a way that is like very a lot, and that'd be a cool thing to legitimately a very cool thing to subject Keeghan to, because it would make his tiny little grumbly old man brain just fucking explode.
Listen,
And
I like weird music when I like hear it or find it. I just like I don't seek out music usually. Like my musical like experience is usually I'll find something through something else, through a TV show, a video game, a movie or something like that, and I'll be like, oh, that's cool, and I'll kind of keep it in my mind, and like maybe I'll look up like who it is, but I almost never go like hardcore, super deep. Usually a lighter thing for me. So I mean, I know, and there have been times in my life where I have, but they are really few and far between.
Man, I gotta tell you, it's not the music will not necessarily make your little tiny old man brain explode, but the music videos absolutely will.
Oh,
So it'll be good. It'll be excellent. We'll save that. That's not this episode. This episode is a different thing.
yes, yes, indeed. Should I do the official start?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, don't you?
Indeed. Hi, welcome to Hey, Look at My Thing. I'm Keegan Reynolds, and I'm joined, as always, by
Aaron Irons and
And Rachel Bennett. Sup?
We are this week going to be exploring the pilot for the TV show Pushing Daisies. Are either of you familiar with this television show?
if somebody can talk to dead people or something, is that how it's about?
It's along those lines. I'm assuming you may have seen like clips or seen like I don't know, maybe like half an episode or something. It seems like.
I have seen definitely trailers of some kind.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think like advertisements, like I'm familiar with it it was a part of a cultural zeitgeist in a time where I really wasn't consuming much media type way.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, so it came out in 2007 and it was only on for like a year and a half.
Hmm.
It was a fairly short-lived show, but it was pretty well loved. Um, it's been described as a fantasy mystery comedy drama. And the premise, as Aaron was alluding to, the main character um, can, if he touches a dead thing, it comes back to life. If he touches it again, it then is dead forever. Um, and there's one other caveat: if he lets the thing be alive for more than 60 seconds, something of kind of equivalent value has to die to replace it.
Does it stay alive after that, or?
Yeah, it stays alive until he touches it again.
But does it like continually consume things every 60 seconds, or is it just once?
Nope, just the one time.
Interesting.
It was made by a man named Brian Fuller, who did a show called Dead Like Me. He was involved in Star Trek Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Discovery and the American Gods TV show. I don't know if you've watched any of those things.
Voyager is definitely on my watch list right now, and I've been consuming that steadily.
I have seen smatterings of Star Trek in the way that you do in a Star Wars household.
Nice, nice. The main character of Ned is played by Lee Pace, who is the Elf King in The Hobbit and the bad guy in the first Guardian of the Galaxy movies.
Okay.
Um,
That was an
uh,
excellent sort of intersection of cultural references that I actually fucking understand for once. Those were peak choices. Good edit.
yeah, I was like, I think they might know at least one of those two people. Uh, um, the main kind of female lead is Anna Friel, who is in a English kind of like Luther, which you mentioned in a previous episode, called Marcella,
Oh.
about a lady who is a detective who has blackouts and thinks she might have murdered people. Um, then it has Chi McBride, who is in Gone in 60 Seconds and a show called Human Target, and then the delightful Kristen Chenoweth, who,
Oh, there's
yes,
somebody I know. Musical theater. You got me.
Yep, nope,
yes,
we're back in. So you sort of lost Aaron and I in the middle with things like Gone in 60 Seconds, where we're sitting here nodding politely, like, well, this man's insane. And then you came back to Kristen Chenoweth, and both of our hearts beat in unison, and we were there for everything that was.
unfortunately in the pilot she doesn't sing, but there are about 4 or 5 episodes where she has actual musical numbers where she like has a full-on singing song, and they're
I mean,
they're incredible.
if you have her, like, how could you not?
Yeah,
Honestly,
it was
that's
really
great.
good.
Yeah.
The aesthetic is very interesting. It's very playful. The dialogue is very tongue in cheek. There's like a fairy tale feel. One of the things that is unique to it, there's a narrator who like narrates all the action, kind of like in like a fairy tale book would. Um, and like all the people's names and company names of the things they come in contact with are always very punny. Um, it looks beautiful, and the everything is crisp. It's just it's very nice. It won 7 Emmys for mostly for like the visual style and the sound. The sound is really good, like the music and the interstitial kind of stuff. It only had 22 episodes, but it was voted like one of the most like canceled too early shows
Mm.
several different times.
Mhm.
Um, there's been like a comic book that like continued like a season 3, but that's the only thing that's kind of come since then. Um, I remember I watched it when it was on, and I bought the DVDs afterward and watched them several times. So I have seen all the episodes multiple times, which is kind of why I chose it because I really have dug pretty deep into it. Um, I think you guys will enjoy it just because it is delightful. That is the best word to describe it.
So I'm getting just from your description, and like, tell me if I'm wrong, because as we've discussed before, it's important to go in with like accurate expectations to
Hmm,
a thing
hmm.
you're going to watch. But I'm getting kind of like almost like Good Place vibes. Like it does things that are legit, but mostly it's like more comedic or like a beaten tone. Is that like a pretty accurate?
Yeah, I'd say that there's some similar like feel between that and The Good Place. I could definitely see that in like the way the characters interact with each other,
Mm,
especially.
okay, cool. Well, I'm excited.
Yeah, let's get it.
All right, so we're gonna go and watch that, and we will be back in a second.
Hey, there's not a particularly extra message this week. The world is weird and scary and bad in a lot of ways, but it's also good in a lot of ways, and you can be part of that. So take some extra time this week to show somebody you care about some appreciation or help somebody who's in need, and just make the world a little bit better by being in it. Okay, love you all. Bye.
And we are back. I just first want to ask my brilliant co-host, well, what did you think?
I really enjoyed this. So there's the sound was great, and there were a lot of things that I recognized and really liked. Some of the visual stuff, I like the colors, the Art Deco feel of it, and there are only a few like visual things where it's like this either looks a little dated or cheap, but otherwise, like it was an aesthetic. It wasn't necessarily the visual itself that I had issue with. Like I like the aesthetic. Maybe they could have presented it a little bit better, but overall it was really
it was 13 years ago. Like when the dog was like running through the field, I was watching that. I'm like, ooh, geez,
yeah, those like sort of CG flowers, like, ooh, that did not age well.
You know, I actually disagree. I think that, like, considering its age, the CG holds up okay. Like, I've seen some pretty bad CG in some pretty recent movies where this feels just almost like painterly, right? Like just stylized in that kind of like painterly quality, just enough that it like feels intentional in the way that like if you go back and play, you know, like Borderlands or something, you don't notice that the graphics are bad because it has a very like, well, you do, but it has a very intentional style that helps it not age out quite as quickly. And I think it's the same way where like they were very careful about the style. The flowers were like a notable exception where the color was so stunning that you almost don't notice for a second. It's like so bold and bright. But then like, as it zooms in, you're like, a lot of the other things that were very definitely CG'd held up pretty well. Considering the age of, I mean, that's what 13 years ago. Is that what we're talking about? Like, oof, Nelly. Like, think of the kind of games you were playing in 2007. And then think about how that CG looks. Like it really didn't do too badly, all things considered.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk quickly about what happened in this episode.
Oh my God, yes.
So, he was a child at the beginning. His dog died. The dog was revived.
Wait. Let me stop you for a second. I have a problem with you.
Yeah.
I have some words for you. It's very important. Now, the dog came back. And that makes it mostly okay. But you gotta like tell a body if a dog's gonna get hit by a truck.
That was the very first thing that happened. I was I was watching it and I'm like, ooh,
Daisies and the fucking dog dies. And I was not ready for it. I had a moment. He got better. Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah. I was watching, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what happens at the beginning. It's been a little while.
Yikes. So, okay, anyway, sorry, Aaron, continue.
So he has this power to revive his dog, which I want to revisit that in just a moment. Then later, presumably not the same day, his mom is baking pies, which is important, and she kills a fly, he revives the fly, and something else has to die instead of the fly, like we had mentioned, and his mom dies. So then he revives the mom. His neighbor, who he's in love with, her dad dies. And so he's got all this death kind of rolling, and he finally gets it kind of in his head when she kisses him goodnight and she dies again. The full extent of the power.
They explain it really well in like the first 5 minutes. You kind of know all the rules about him.
Mm-hmm. And the thing I take issue with is he touches the dog to bring it back and just happens to, between that moment and the mom and all of that, never touch his dog once.
There's a little suspension of disbelief there.
Also, okay, they watched a guy that this kid knew and had played with earlier that day, right? They watched him drop dead out the window. The mom is so like traumatized or surprised or whatever by this that she drops the pie on the floor and shatters the pie plate, and it's a whole thing, right? And between that and bedtime, she never has physical contact with this kid. Yep. She doesn't say, oh my God, this horrible thing happened. Here, let me give you a hug. Like, what the fuck? I guess, like, it makes sense that he's so, like, very anti-physical contact later because of the powers, but also, like, kid needed hugs. Like, he was probably not getting a lot of physical affection.
Yeah.
Even to begin with.
Keeghan has a point with the willing suspension of disbelief, and they're just setting up that dramatic moment for the kiss that would, like, you just have to disbelieve the in between, because I mean it just doesn't really make sense.
I mean, it's like he wouldn't have touched his dog, he wouldn't have touched his mom. I mean, logically that probably wouldn't have happened, but like you can put it aside. It's not like a huge break. It's just, okay, this is just to show you what the premise of the show is. It's not like that's not like a super important part. It's not going to like break the rest of the show because he didn't touch his mom for a day.
I took it as like informing the rest of the episode in kind of a big way, actually, instead of like breaking that, having that suspension or that break in sort of the reality that they were building. To me, it really added a lot to sort of the things that were happening later. Like, of course, it's really weird for him to touch people because like this isn't something he received even before he had these magic powers, is something that to me gives Ned a little bit more depth as we're going through. And the show makes a little bit more sense on a deeper level to me if I think about like this is the way that it's dealing with this sort of like, I don't know if I would call it trauma, although it definitely does deal with trauma as well. But in this case, it's just kind of like damage, right? Like he as a child did not receive a lot of physical affection. Physical affection is very important to child development, to being like a healthy, well-functioning adult. You should probably experience some kind of like familial physical affection in your life. Clearly that didn't happen much. And like the way that he becomes so like awkward and withdrawn, not just because of this weird supernatural power, but also because of like the way he was raised, sort of informs a little bit more on that character and makes it a little more believable to me.
And they go into like in further episodes, there's a lot of flashbacks to like him as a kid at like boarding school. And I mean, obviously, usually, in the episodes, they'll directly relate to the plot of the current episode. Like there's an episode where like at his boarding school, they're running like a gambling casino like after night. And like in the actual episode, they're at a like a legal gambling facility. So like there's always like a pretty like straight A to B sort of line between the flashbacks and the other stuff, but they also definitely pepper in more kind of personality beats, like, oh, this is why he's like this, or this is why he stopped doing this. You got to see all the characters. These are basically all the main characters that are in the show.
We only got to like the prologue of the summary of this episode.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Aaron, why don't you take it from there?
Okay, so fast forward like 20 years or so. He's running a pie shop. He has an employee who is Kristen Chenoweth, which we all love.
Yep.
Trying to get really physical with him, but he's like not all about it. He's still in love with his crush, who he is not introduced to until she dies. Spoiler alert. Up to this point, he's been working with a private investigator who's discovered his secret by a freak accident. So they're kind of in this gig together to revive dead people, find out how they died, and then put them back to sleep. Presumably, that's what they were going to do with his old crush, and he waited too long, and she's now alive, assuming indefinitely, like his dog, who has not yet died. That leaves me with a couple of questions. So I want to take a second to go to like a side tangent. Do things that come back not die of natural causes? Can they not die?
No, they basically can't die, it seems. Like a lot of the like there's another character who gets brought back for more than the amount of time, and obviously the ones that they brought back, like they're obviously dead for a reason. They've been shot or stabbed or burned or whatever, and they talk and are alive and that kind of stuff. So that obviously isn't killing them. So like they don't specifically lay out the rules for that, but it seems like they don't age, and it seems like they can't die.
Yeah, I was curious because I had some anxiety later in the episode when she was sneaking around the house and the killer was presumably around, but we didn't know where he was. I thought, oh gosh, she's back from the dead. He's going to strangle her again and kill her again. And then what happens? Can he touch them after they die the second time to bring them back? Or I like going through all these like motions in my head of like, what if?
I'm wondering if it's a thing like there's an old movie that I don't know if you guys have seen it. It had Bruce Willis and oh my God, I'm blanking on her name. Jeez. It had basically he was a plastic surgeon and he had like a wife and a mistress.
Death Becomes Her?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I got nothing on this, boys. You're on your own.
Basically, they use like a magic spell or something like that to become immortal, so they won't age. But things still happen to them. So they use his like skills as a plastic surgeon to keep them looking like the age they want to be. And so I wonder if it has like similar rules or like they could get like an arm cut off. It wouldn't kill them, but their arm would still be missing. It's not like it's going to grow back or something.
Yeah. So in Death Becomes Her, just the extra little caveat, they got this treatment while they were alive and it would preserve them as beautiful and young forever. But then jealousy caused them to kill one another. And so they're part of this like never die club, but they did die, but they never like
stop moving.
Yeah, so they're rotting away because they're dead, but they never stop functioning, which is kind of like this still the major taboo.
Goldie Hawn. That was who I was trying to think of.
That sounds very gross. Like good and interesting, but also very gross.
It's a black comedy.
It was a gross movie.
It's just it's a great movie. I do highly recommend it. It's one of those cult classics that you probably should indulge yourself in and check out.
And in the show, as it goes on, there are like some disgusting kind of gross things because you'll come to the morgue and it'll be somebody who like has like massive burns all over their face, and like wearing a big prosthetic thing, obviously.
Who got their face partially eaten by a dog. Also, exonerate Cantaloupe. I'm just so glad Cantaloupe was innocent, and goddamn it, the Rottweiler was innocent too. And let's stop demonizing dog breeds. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, that was obviously the secretary. The secretary told the dog to do it. It's not his fault. He was just following orders.
No
man.
bad dogs, only bad owners.
Yes. So like one of the cases that they do right away there is to kind of show what their business is like is a person was killed by a dog and the family didn't think the dog did it. So he came in there and asked him about it when he was dead. And he said, no, it wasn't that dog. It was a different dog. And they put him back to dead and use that information to free the cantaloupe, the dog, and justice was done, and they collected a reward. And they kind of just use that to show this is business as usual. This is what they do, once a month, once a week to supplement their income.
Yeah. I think we've sufficiently gotten through most of the episode to kind of talk about a few of the like little details. There's lots of little details that I loved about this. Yeah. I love the 60s Art Deco style that's preserved throughout it, usually mostly in the early stuff, but they really kept a lot of that kind of vibe throughout. It's almost like a Tim Burton Bright and Cheery kind of look to it. It's
got a sort of weird like playtime-y quality to it that feels very Tim Burton-y. Play both in like the way children play with toys and also play in the way that like a set for a play is done. Like both are very accurate.
Yes. And speaking of using words and wordplay,
oh my gosh,
there's so much alliteration, so many puns. The one that really got me and I loved was the masturbation and thinking it was Chewy.
Oh, that one was very good.
Yeah. Her character is delightful throughout the whole series. I mean, the little taste you got from this episode is who she is the entire time, and it's just always fun when she's on screen.
going a little bit deeper into some of the themes, I guess. One thing that I notice, and I don't know why shows and games and things do this, but there's always a guy, there's always a girl, and then there is this other person. And that can be like a fairy creature, it can be a dog, and often it's a black guy. And like, why is there so often used like a black person as a third wheel in a show?
This is a thing. Okay, so the reason for this is because, like, culturally and with like test audiences and all kinds of things, and this is like a statement that will fill me with crippling despair, and probably you too as I say it, but like when you're looking at how audiences respond to things, people, until very recently, where attitudes have started to shift more noticeably, people don't respond well to Black people on screen who have families. Black people can be the funny side character. Black people can be like lone wolf badasses. You can have a Black mother, but that's kind of fraught, and she will not be the main character. Think about it. Like, really take a think about it. Think about pre-2010. What media did you see that had a Black person with a family?
Family Matters.
Yeah, that was about it.
Okay,
that was the only one I was thinking of too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, right? We have like a couple of sitcoms that noticed this was a thing and said, fuck, right? Like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air did the same thing. They went, fuck, this is a problem. Like, we have no representation in the media of just like Black families, not even like super healthy or super dysfunctional or ones that are working through, just like families that are also Black. We don't have this in the media, and they tried, and they connected with people in a real way, and the execs were like, yeah, we really don't want to do this anymore.
They do get into like his background a little bit further in, I want to say it was the second season. He is a father. Like he had a girlfriend who was a con woman, and they had a child, and then she did a con and it went badly, and she took the child and just disappeared, and he can't find either of them.
But it takes him until season 2 to have a family?
Okay. I mean, Emerson, the character does get more developed, which I'm happy about, because you didn't want him just to be the wise Kraken sidekick. You want him to be a person. And
he's a good foil. Like, that's the purpose he's supposed to serve in the story, and he does a decent job of it. But it is nice to know that, like, eventually he gets to also have a personality.
It is unfortunate that, it's just not like standard that your characters should be people, that they're not just like props used for other things. And obviously, I don't think this show is the worst example of that. I mean, there's obviously much, much worse examples of shows just using, those kind of characters as just like a crutch for the other characters. But, hopefully 2020 now, if this would have came out, it would have been slightly better represented.
I also think that, like, by asking them to have, I mean, we watched the first episode, right? So realistically, if we're looking at pretty much, well, okay, I was going to say a thing and then I remembered that I was wrong. If we're looking at most of the characters, very little of them have a lot to fall back on as far as being developed, because you're trying to get like the tone and feeling of the story across in a pilot and let people know, hey, this is what the show is going to be like, and this is kind of what you can get into. But like, and this is cool. I really like this. But also, the ants had like 30 times more developed personality than Emerson did.
Yeah.
They were like very distinct because they were so sort of exaggerated into like caricatures. You got a really strong feeling of exactly what those very wacky ants were about, and the difference between them, even though it just sort of said like, oh, well, these are two crazy old ladies. They don't go outside because they're crazy old ladies. But like, you understood that really was not the case, that there was more going on. And they set that up really well. So it seems like kind of a loss to not give that to Emerson, who's going to be, a starring character all the way through. And honestly, to Kristen Chenoweth as well, who, as far as we know, is a little bit of a ditz, which poor Kristen Chenoweth is not a ditz. And I understand it's a fun role to play, but I just feel bad.
She does get that role more than not.
Keeps happening. Yeah.
They do have episodes, like they have, I guess, just basically just one episode kind of about her past as a racehorse jockey, which was a fun episode.
That's delightful as hell. Like, why could I not get a little bit of racehorse jockey in the first one? Anyway, I get it. There's time considerations to make.
Right. I agree with you with the ants being really interestingly developed. They're almost like Roald Dahl characters.
Yes, very much so. And I think Tim Burton is a good comparison there.
And I think that really, they almost didn't do that enough maybe with the main characters. And maybe that's okay that you want some characters that are a little more relatable. And so your main three are not too far, but almost everyone they encounter is a little bit of a caricature.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Keeghan, but I feel like maybe the ants come back, but only intermittently.
Yeah. They're in most episodes. They're usually not a main part. Like this one, they went to their house and that kind of stuff. They'll check in with the ants probably most episodes. I know at one point they start sending them pies, and she actually does drug their pies with antidepressants to try to get them to go out of the house. And there's a couple more them focused episodes, and as there's becomes a mystery element to the show about both of Chuck and Ned's dads. They had some sort of weird crime, archaeological sort of criminal sort of background that they're trying to figure out. Both of the ants have relationships in the past with those people, and so they're involved in that mystery. I don't know if I want to spoil anything about it.
Don't spoil. Aaron is hooked.
It's good, and it's only 22 episodes, so it really isn't much of a buy-in.
Yeah.
I really wish there was more of it. It really did get cut short. And having just even a season or two more, or maybe a full length sort of feature, because there was a lot of unanswered questions at the end, unfortunately. But I really enjoy it because I love the tone, I love the playfulness, I love the wordplay, and I really like almost all of the actors. I really like Lee Pace and Anna Faris, everything those people have been in. I've enjoyed.
Yeah, I sometimes lament shows that get cut too soon, and we can all say Firefly and that little circle jerk for a little bit. But there's something about those shows that were cut off a little bit early, where it's they have a place in my heart because it's super digestible to sit down and consume them, and all of it feels really good. And there's never a part of it that's it
doesn't lag.
Necessary.
It never has that season 2 of Buffy where you're fuck this one again, right?
Yeah.
Or the last 3 seasons of last 3 seasons of West Wing.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's always that in a show that just goes, it's either, I guess most people would say it's full life, but maybe a little more than it needed.
I mean, sometimes one of the hard things I think one of the things that has to be hardest about writing a show, and I think that honestly British television is a lot better at it. Not looking at Doctor Who, please ignore Doctor Who for the entirety of this comment. But like British television tends to be a lot better at looking at a story and saying, okay, this is done.
Yeah, knowing when it's done.
It had 3, they call them series instead of seasons, I think. It had 3 series, and that's all it needs. And yeah, people love it, and it had a great reception, and people would love it if we did 13 more. But it's a 3 series story, and I've done my 3 series, and now it's done. We just can't. We can't, because it keeps making money. And if it's going to keep making money, we'll keep fucking putting it on TV at The Simpsons.
Yeah. The thing I wanted to follow up with that is like Avatar and Legend of Korra, those ones that I was really into. There's a 3-season thing. That's the story. It's done. And the other one is a 4-season thing, and it's done. So like that's it. Like that's what I really like, is like they knew when they were going to be done. They said, we're done. They put a pin in it. And if they were going to make something new, it was a totally different show with a totally different direction and hardly any of the same characters.
Yeah. Well, and I think that shows that, like, from the beginning, they were thinking about, like, the craft of that story and how it was going to look. And you know that it has a narrative arc, beginning, middle, end, split up into those smaller narrative arcs. Oh, this one also has a beginning, middle, end, but it's a part of this bigger beginning, middle, end, right? When you have a show that is willing to say, look, this is how many seasons I need, this is how many seasons I'm going to do, and that's it, and then we're moving on, they've put that time into the story. Whereas, you know, if a show comes back for its 2nd season and they're like, oh, we didn't think we'd make it, and they haven't put that work in, everything from there on is kind of scrabbling to catch up. Like, fuck, what are we going to do this season, right? Like, who's the big bad or whatever. And you can tell it starts to happen generally right around like season 5 is where people start to struggle generally. But like it varies obviously, but toward the end run, like most shows you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that will about wrap up the episode. Did everybody enjoy the show?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Aaron, did you have anything else on your massive list of things?
I just thought that Ned was a super adorable and shy character, and I know that was incredibly intentional, but like, oof, right in the feels.
Just the world's most painfully awkward human. It's very good. You just want to pick him up and squish him, and he would hate every second of it. It'd be like picking up your cat and squishing him, where they're like, oh, please no.
Yeah, the relationship between Ned and Chuck is just adorable, like almost all the time. Like even like when they're mad at each other, it's still adorable. It's just you can't get away from it.
It was all kind of gooey for me. I prefer the relationship between Ned and Digby the dog, but that's
just a little stick to scratch the head.
Like
that's
hand
it.
on a stick to scratch his head. Oh, my heart. Digby's the real hero.
All right, I believe next week Aaron is going to bring us something.
Yes,
Aaron, what are you going to bring us?
I'll tell you what we're going to be watching. We're going to be actually listening to Harry Potter and the Sacred Text.
Ooh,
that's very exciting.
Change indeed.
I'm very excited for it. Is this going to like test my latent Harry Potter knowledge? Should I like binge through the books this week, or like what do I need? Is there homework?
No, they do a 30-second recap at the beginning, so they'll get you up to speed. And I think the first episode is enough to dip our toe in. It definitely evolves over time, and I'd love to like do more than that. But I think we can get enough out of it with the first episode and be engaged, just because the formula is generally the same throughout.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool. Well, I am psyched for it.
Me too.
Okay, awesome. Well, we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
You Through the Cup is this amazing song that we discovered through totally different means. You through the...
So not through the ferret tummy dance gift for you then.